Hello, and welcome to the Southern IPM Center Enhancement Grant RFA webinar. I'm Joe LaForest. I'm one of the directors here at the Southern IPM Center, and with me today is Jean-Jacques Dubois, who is our evaluation specialist here at the Southern IPM Center. We're going to go through the RFA with you today, answer any questions you may have, and go over some of the main details that you've probably already seen within the RFA text itself. There's no secrets in what we're going to say here. Everything we're going to say will be found in the RFA. If at any point you have a question, there is a section for questions in the GoToWebinar control panel. Type the question in there and we will answer them as we're going through, and also have a question and answer session at the end. We want you to definitely be informed and have all the information you need to put together a great proposal. If at any time after the webinar you have additional questions, you are always welcome to reach out to myself, Jean-Jacques, or my co-director, or the director with me, Denisha Seth Carley, to just run ideas by us, see what may work and how the proposal can be best structured to work on these to fit the Enhancement Grant RFA. So without any further ado, you've probably already found the Enhancement Grant announcement, which was on our website, providing information about the deadlines and everything else with that, which we will go through as well. You've then, in going to get the RFA, probably saw a page asking you to please fill out a survey to let us know about how you found out about the RFA. It helps us to improve this in future years and make sure more people are aware of it. And then finally, you made it through this to be able to go to download the RFA from our proposal management system. The reason I'm starting off here is because throughout the discussion of the RFA, I'm going to be showing you that there's different forms you can download. All the forms you need for the RFA are present on this page and can be downloaded. So this is an important page to remember when you go to apply to the actual proposal management system. Without further ado, this is the RFA, which you have all seen at this point because you found the webinar link, which is where we had that. I'm going to skip past the summary because a lot of what we're going to talk about, or everything we're going to talk about, is actually explained in more detail in other sections. First of all, the purpose of the IPM enhancement grants. We are trying to increase the coordination of people working on integrated pest management, facilitate the development of new pest management tactics to control pests, and improve our timely response to them. All the projects that we're going to fund fit into these guidelines for why we're trying to improve integrated pest management. You can also find the IPM roadmap at that link. These are all things that we're expecting people to cite when they're talking about the background justification for why their project fits the purpose of this RFA. This RFA has 3 different project types that come into the system. First one is seed projects. These are where someone has a great idea, they want to start something off, and they need some funds to help get a pilot study done, get some baseline data, and help see if something would be worth looking at in a larger grant down the road. It's anything from initial survey of where pests may be, development of tools, early research, the things you would need to be able to take the next steps. The next type of project is actually the other end of the spectrum. It's you've had a large project, you're finishing things up, and what would really make this project great is if we had this one piece to finish things off. We call those capstone projects. These help get the results of the research out there to people that can actually use them, help with the adoption of IPM, often including extension programs in trying to get this adopted across wider regions or adapted to other areas. Both the seed and capstone projects are limited to $30,000 total project funds. There are indirect costs on those that we'll talk about here in a little bit, but for both those projects, you're looking at $30,000. The third type of project is an IPM working group project. We realize that solutions to many of the complex pest problems that are out there don't come from individuals working in silos. We have to have people come together to have discussions about the priorities for what should happen in a particular commodity or setting, how to best approach that, and find a plan of work for how you're going to move forward in the future over the next 5, 10, 15 years to try to make a difference for that particular setting. We do fund working groups for those people to travel to a location, hold their meeting, and come up with the priorities, discuss what the project needs to go, and take that further. These projects, the things for team building, bringing the group together, the funds for that are limited to $10,000. The working groups, however, can then apply in the same application or in the same proposal to not only meet for that $10,000, but also carry out a seed or a capstone project for $30,000. The total of those two together is where you get this $40,000 within the context of the project. For newly forming working groups, groups that don't currently exist or have not existed in a real formal way or a cohesive way, they can meet that first year and only go for just $10,000 for a working group. We've said that because many groups that are just forming don't have the cohesiveness to not only form and set priorities, but also carry out a project. So that first year, a group can get together, and then if they choose to apply in future years, they could apply not only for the team building, but also a project to go along with it. That doesn't mean that a group can't form and go for a project and the full $40,000 right off the bat, but it would be something that you'd want to address in your RFA, in your proposal, that if it's a new group, this is why they would be successful in not only forming, but also carrying out a project in that first year. All funds for these projects are 1 year only. The total pool for the grant, for this particular grant, is $180,000. That's a little bit down from previous years, but you will be seeing another RFA from the center in a few months that's going to address IPM documents. People talking about this, documenting the state of IPM, what the current pests are, what the priorities are for extension and research. So funds are going towards some of that in the future, and keep an eye out for that RFA. So with $180,000 total funds and projects ranging between $10,000, $30,000, and $40,000, you can kind of get a feel for how many projects may be funded through this grant program. All of our grants are outcome-based. We're hopefully going to be seeing outcomes from these projects to help show that we are making progress towards the goal of better pest control and better pest management. So a lot of this, you'll see both outputs and outcomes, and Jean-Jacques is going to talk more about that and how they all come together. Going down through the RFA, this is a more explanation of that team building versus the output portion of the project. That if you're just getting a group together to meet, that's the $10,000 portion of the budget. And then there's a $30,000 portion of the budget for a project if they're choosing to do a project. In terms of who is eligible to apply for these grants, it's a fairly wide pool. Anything from private individuals, institutions, faculty and staff at qualified four-year universities, businesses, commodity organizations, government, non-governmental organizations. The biggest thing about this is actually that they're in the southern region. The primary project director must be within the region, and the work must benefit the region. I have seen projects that work with other regions, and we encourage that, but there has to be benefit in the proposal to the southern region. You can also include other people in your working groups or in your project from other regions. There's no problem with that. Just the project director has to be in the southern region, and the work should benefit the region. Very important thing that the deadline for all of these grants is November 16th, 2018, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. If you are in Central Time, make sure to watch your clocks. At 5 p.m. Eastern Time, we close the proposal management system. So if you were in the middle of submitting something and it wasn't quite there, I'm sorry. The deadline for it is 5 p.m. Eastern Time. It will be closed, and that's the rules we work by. This is going through where you can find, again, the proposal management system, all that information online, including videos for how you can apply it to how you can use the system, how it functions. We provide some instructions here. There's also assistance from Alex and Rosemary at the Southern IPM Center, or myself, Jean-Jacques, and Denacia for helping you as you're trying to submit your proposals. My advice is to start early and finish before the deadline, as far before the deadline as you can push it. No sense waiting till the end. In terms of components, what you're going to be looking at in submitting for the proposal, these again are the forms you saw online on the web page for it. You have your proposal submission form, which is just the basic contact information, summary, and objectives for your proposal. You have a cover sheet and assurances form, which is something your grant office will get with you on, because your AOR does need to sign off on that. At this point, I'm going to switch over to Jean-Jacques, who's going to go over the logic model and portions of the narrative that you'll be looking at. And you are currently muted.
Thank you. Let me get to the right page. Okay, there we go. So, as we say in the very first paragraph of the logic model, I'm going to go through logic model and narrative here, right? Parts of the proposal. The idea is that the logic model, first of all, is a very important component, but it is the summary of the rest of the narrative, and it's in fact organized exactly the same way. So in other words, the entire narrative, you should see it as you should see the logic model as a condensed version of the entire narrative, and every part that's in the logic model, you will find it in the narrative. So your choice really. Some people prefer to start with the condensed version, and by building first the logic model, right, and then expand it into the narrative. Some people prefer to start with the narrative and condense it into the logic model. Let me see. So the parts that the narrative and the logic model are going to require are situation, and priorities. So this where you define the problem. In this case, it behooves you to bring known sources like priorities and things like that, previous work, in order to show the relevance of the situation of the problem to the southern region. Inputs are the things you are going to use, the personnel, the expertise, previous work, this sort of thing. Also, your some of the resources that would come up in the budget part of the proposal. Now, outputs, and this is just a basic evaluation terminology that's necessary here, but it's completely defined in the text when you read it. So those outputs are things that you're planning to do, to make, or services you're planning on providing. The idea of the proposal and what the panel is going to be looking for is a logical connection from the problem through the things you're going to do to the results those things are going to have, and to eventually the resolution of the problem you defined at the beginning. Now, the resolution of the problem you defined in the beginning is the outcomes, the result of the things you did, or the services you provided, right? Now, this grant program is very short. It's just a one-year grant, so we are well aware that most, if not all, of those outcomes of the results of what you're going to do are not going to be seen within the period of the grant, within the date range of where you will be receiving the funds, and will not be seen before you turn in a report for this grant, right? So we understand that. However, in order to convince the panel that indeed you will solve the problem you defined, you should provide those outcomes, and the main place for that will be the logic model. So please, keep those outcomes realistic. Very often people like to put grand outcomes at the end. This is not necessary. Just make sure that your outcomes are logically and temporally connected to your outputs, to what you're going to do, and that they are indeed correspond to the problem you're trying to solve. Now, in terms of reporting, you will see that indicators are important, and those are simply, the things you intend to measure, to report and to keep track of what it is that you're doing and what result it's having, right? Assumption external factors are explained in the logic model form, which is at the end of the RFA, and by the way, can be downloaded, and that you should download as a separate Word document. So there is a template for the logic model, this Word document, and makes formatting a little bit easier. So narrative, again, all the elements of the narrative are clearly explained here. Please be careful about the page limits. Many panelists are really quite attentive to those, to you following the exact directions of the RFA, and all of that is quite clear here. Should it not be clear, like for example, I look here at problem and justification, limit 2 pages. Any question you have regarding those aspects, please do call any of us to clarify. Further in the narrative, you will have to provide us with this table here. We assume there will be more lines to your table than in this sample here, right? Where you say, where again, you get to establish the connection between what you intend to do, the outputs, and what the anticipated outcomes are. Now, the outcomes you are anticipated, they're expected. We're not asking you certainty there. You can only be certain about what you will do, which is the outputs, and you do need to tell us what is expected to occur as an effect, and exactly what party. So this particular table here, in other words, the panel will expect this to be very believable. So that's why I was saying earlier that the anticipated outcome need to be realistic. They don't have to be idealistic and grand in any way. They can just address the problem. Milestones. This is another table. Many examples here in the text on page 10 and 11 of what milestones may look like. And here is the table with some examples in it. And right, so the milestones are made up of something that you will accomplish, or that you expect it, or that you expect to happen, who's responsible, and a date, right? And again, the panel will look to this as to see if your plan is reasonable and feasible, right? So just as much as your inputs, for example, the personnel, the resources you're going to bring to this project. This is just as important in establishing, in convincing the panel that the project is feasible. Evaluation plan is, well, I think well described here, but do call me if you have any question, me specifically now, Jean-Jacques Dubois, here at the center, if you have any questions regarding the evaluation plan. I think this is cooperation of key personnel and institutional unit involved. I think this is for Joe, isn't it? Joe?
Yep, you might want to touch on resources and
expertise and leveraging.
Expertise and leveraging and procedures.
Right. So that's well, all of that really should be evident from the CVs and the letter of support. So this is all you're going to bring besides just the funds that would be available from this grant. Everything you're going to bring to bear to accomplish what you say you intend to accomplish. And please, yeah, do connect them to you know, if you bring letters of support and you know, tell us about just let us know where their expertise is relevant within your proposal.
I'll bring it back over to me now to finish out what we're looking at. We hope that you found a lot of what Jean-Jacques was going through in the portions of the actual narrative pretty straightforward. We've tried to make this as direct of an RFA as we possibly can. What's the problem? What are you going to do to help contribute to a solution? How are you going to measure that it was getting done? Why is your group the best group to do that? We've tried to make it as practical as possible, so we always encourage feedback on these RFAs just so we can better improve this for the future. So as you're working through it, like Jean-Jacques said, any questions, feel free to reach out to us and let us know. And hopefully it's pretty straightforward. The other forms that then filling out, these are additional ones you are downloading from that page I showed you originally. Cooperation of key personnel and institutional units involved. It's a template. You download it, fill it out. The budget, which is in an Excel form, remembering that there are 30% indirects that are allowed on these projects. That 30% is total federal funds. So you have to work with your grants office to figure out if they're looking at modified total direct or total federal funds. Both those rates are in here. 30% total federal funds is equivalent to 24.86% total direct cost. So work with your grants office to help figure that out, or contact us if you have any questions. The budget narrative, which is just the explanation of where those funds are going. That's also good sometimes in there to put down specifics about different things that you may be using, not just that you may be using a certain application server or something out there, but details of why it is that of what it is that you're actually purchasing. The final forms that you have are the typical ones you have for almost any grant project: current and pending support, conflict of interest, and the CVs, limiting them down to a short 2 pages of why these individuals are the best people to get this job done and how they're going to contribute to the project. With the evaluation and selection criteria, each of these proposals will be scored by a panel of folks from not the southern region, but other people in somehow related to agriculture, integrated pest management in the country. So looking at these proposals, they'll be evaluated for how well they address regional priorities, how well they think this is going to meet the goals of the program, and what the likelihood is of success. I always encourage everyone to look at page 15. These are the explicit things that the panel is asked when they're looking at your proposal. So one of the best checks you can do is go through your proposal and ask yourself honestly, did I follow all the format guidelines in the RFA? Those are pretty easy points. Is the information presented clearly? And just go through these things to make sure that you can truly say to yourself, you know what? I really did well on this, or, I can explain this just a little bit better here, or identify this, why we're doing this, or where the gaps were while we're taking on this project. Make sure you've got some clear guidelines for what's going on here.
Right. And Joe?
Yes?
I wanted to say also that if you notice the sections and the line items in this scoring sheet that the panelists will use each have a clear place in the description up to this. So you can go and find each of these line items somewhere in your narrative or your forms.
Yes. We also greatly encourage letters of support. Those letters of support should reference the proposal, that the people know what the title of it is. They know what you're planning to do. They understand the importance of it. And if they are going to somehow participate with you on the project, identify how they're going to work with you on that. We've mentioned throughout that you should contact us. Our contact information is one of the last pages of the RFA. So you've got our contact information there. We put it there on purpose. You're welcome to use it as much as you need to get additional clarification or feedback on particular elements of your proposal. We will not read through your proposal and provide back comments, but we are more than happy to entertain phone conversations and discuss different specifics of what you're looking at for the general idea and help provide you some strategies for how you could improve the project. One of the items in here is the provision of resources from facilitation of innovation through technology. Within this proposal, there is a section which discusses that, which says if you're looking for some technology and it's resources that are already available, be it webinars, project management software through something like Basecamp, online mapping for where different pests are, reporting of where pests are, use of smartphone applications, web hosting, a variety of different things which could help out your project. They are covered under the Facilitation of Innovation through Technology program, which I oversee. Those projects or those resources are available to you at no cost. We'll provide you whatever resources we already have available, and you are welcome to use them and incorporate them into your projects. Many people are using this to leverage what we currently have available, so they don't need to have that in the proposal at all. There is no scoring, which your score will not change whether you use it or not, but it's just one additional thing that we provide for you that if it can be of use and help your project be more successful because some of that technology burden has been removed from you, then great. We're happy to provide it for you and help your project be a success. If you have questions about what all that entails, feel free to reach out to me and I can go into more detail. One thing we will mention is that for those that are funded, project reports will be submitted into the proposal management system, which is the same system that we're looking at here. So they are required to use those templates to actually report back on their projects. Another thing, that people who have been previously funded and have not sent in their final reports are not eligible for funding. So if you have a project that has ended and you have not sent in your final report, please submit your final report. Otherwise, that could be a rude awakening when we get to the adjudication stage of the grant process. And that is pretty much the entire RFA. The only thing left at the end was the templates for the logic models. We're going to go ahead and end the webinar. This video will be posted to the Southern IPM Center YouTube channel, so you could rewind it, watch through it, and see what else is there. As I said, we've tried to make it as straightforward as possible. If you see some way we can make it more straightforward, by all means, let us know. And if you have any questions at all in the entire process, please reach out to us early on so that we can help answer those questions and provide clarification. Thank you all for attending, and have a good rest of your day.